Have you ever looked at something like a bumblebee and wondered, not just what it is, but maybe who designed it? Well, today we're diving into a source that sees the entire natural world not just as biology, but as this incredible masterpiece of divine engineering. We're going to look at nature through a pretty fascinating theological lens. Our whole journey today really starts with this one idea from Psalm 19. And this isn't just a nice quote. For our source material, this is the entire framework. It's the lens they use to see everything that follows. This idea that nature itself is a kind of declaration, a testament to the work of a creator. So here's our game plan. First, we'll really get a handle on this lens of divine design. Then, we're going to zoom way in on one amazing creature, the bumblebee, and check out its communication and navigation. After that, we'll hop over to the plant kingdom with the pine tree, before kind of pulling back to get the source's big, powerful final message. Okay, so what exactly is this lens of divine design? Well, at its core, it's the idea that all the incredible complexity and, the elegance we see in nature, it isn't just random. Our source argues it's actually clear, tangible evidence of an intelligent and purposeful creator. And this verse from Romans, this is really the cornerstone of the whole argument. It suggests that by studying what has been made, the physical world, we can actually understand the invisible qualities of its maker. This is the exact framework our source is going to use to interpret every single biological detail we're about to look at. All right, now for our first deep dive, the humble bumblebee. Our source presents this little guy not just as an insect, but as a flying, buzzing, a masterpiece of divine engineering. Let's find out why. The evidence, according to the source, is all in the details. That fuzzy little body, it's not just cute, it's a perfectly designed insulator for working in cool weather. And the way they work together in a colony, that's not just social behavior. It's interpreted as a reflection of divine community. And then there's this one skill that's so unique, it gets its own category, buzz pollination. So what on earth is buzz pollination? It's this incredible technique where the bee grabs a flower and vibrates its flight muscles at a super specific frequency. It's almost like a musical note to shake loose stubborn pollen from plants like tomatoes and blueberries. It's a highly specialized skill the source calls a God-given ability, a design that provides for both the bee and, for us. But the engineering doesn't just stop with the body. Now the source shifts to the bee's behavior, pointing out its really sophisticated communication system. And to get how unique it is, it really helps to compare it to its more famous cousin, the honeybee. Right, so most of us have probably heard of the honeybee's waggle dance. It's basically GPS coordinates in dance form. The bumblebee, though, it does things differently. It's more multisensory, using scent, taste, and behavior. But the source makes a really key point here. Different doesn't mean it's less advanced. It's seen as evidence of the creative variety inherent in God's design. I absolutely love this description from the source. It frames the bumblebee's communication not as a bunch of random actions, but as a deliberate chemical language. So let's break down how that language actually works. This slide lays out the whole briefing perfectly. So just picture this. A forager flies in, carrying the scent of a great patch of flowers. It does this excited, trembling dance to get everyone's attention, creating a literal buzz. Then it shares a little taste of the nectar, like, see, it's good. And then it does these little orientation flights, basically pointing and saying it's over that way. It's a complete multisensory mission briefing. Okay, but a general direction isn't enough, right? Once those new recruits take off, how do they actually navigate? This is where the source points to another layer of design, what it calls a divinely gifted internal GPS. The source describes this as a pre-installed navigational toolkit. The bee uses the sun and polarized light as a divine compass. It memorizes landmarks to build mental maps, it follows scent trails like beacons, and it even calculates the most direct flight path home. It is an incredibly sophisticated system. And this brings us to a famous old scientific myth that the source turns into a theological point. See, for decades, there is this idea going around that based on the laws of aerodynamics, the bumblebee shouldn't even be able to fly. Now, we understand the physics now, but the source uses that historical impossibility as a really powerful metaphor for a design that goes beyond our own understanding. But this design perspective isn't just about the animal kingdom. To prove the point, our source turns to the plant world for a second. Quick case study, the pine tree, which it calls a living sermon on purposeful design. Let's just look at the evidence presented. Those needles aren't just leaves. Their waxy, thin shape is the perfect solution for saving water. The ceratinous cones are unbelievable. They're designed to stay sealed shut until a forest fire melts the resin, releasing the seeds into the perfect ash-fertilized soil. The winged seeds, a masterclass in aerodynamics, and the resin is like a combination first aid kit and security system. Each feature, the source argues, is a perfect engineered solution. So, after digging into the tiny details of a bee's flight and a pine tree's survival, where does this all lead? What's the ultimate takeaway from looking at the world through this particular lens of design? The source concludes that when you see the world this way, nature just stops being a series of random accidents. Instead, it becomes this masterpiece of intentional design, where every single detail, from a bee's wing to a pinecone's scales, exists for a purpose. And that purpose is summarized by the phrase, Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be the glory. And that leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. We've just spent this time looking at a bee and a tree through one very specific worldview. The biological facts, though, they stay the same no matter what lens we use. So the real question is, for all of us, how does our own worldview, whatever it might be, shape what we see when we look at the natural world? Does it change a simple bee into a marvel of engineering, a declaration of glory, or something else entirely? It's something to think about the next time you step outside. Thanks for joining me.